Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever you are watching this live or on the replay, I am just delighted to welcome you here. Whether you're watching live or whether you're watching on the replay, I must say thanks to my audience. I am experiencing an increasing viewership, and I am really delighted about that interaction. Really delighted. So, thank you for your support. And I want to start today by just maybe explaining why I am so passionate about supporting women who are going through separation and divorce. Apart from the fact that it's the second most tumultuous life experience, according to psychologists, but I've also been through it. I am speaking to you from my scars, not from my wounds. So I'm speaking to you as someone who has done the work and who has traveled the healing journey. And I have moved forward, and I want to support other women who are going through this, because this is more like an epidemic. We have to first admit that. The breakup of marriages and long-term relationships is at epidemic proportions. Now, raise your hand if you have never met anybody in your friend circle or family circle who is going through this. And I'm almost sure you're going to be able to say, yes, I know 1, 2, 3, or 4. I do not believe there's any of us who could say we don't know someone who is going through this horrible, painful experience. And I'm particularly speaking of people who have children and who are no longer romantically involved with these ex-partners, but you are left disproportionately overwhelmed financially, emotionally, and spiritually. You cannot disentangle your emotional condition from your spiritual state. They are inextricably intertwined. So it knocks at the heart of your soul, of who you are. And that's what makes it so painful, that you're wondering sometimes if you're standing on your head or if you're standing on your feet. I am the mother of 3 young to older daughters. And so my sense of empathy is quadrupled because of the journey that I have walked. I've also watched my eldest daughter a few years ago walk the same journey. And I stood shoulder to shoulder with her, watching her walk through this process. And one of the practical steps I'm going to share today is that the vision that you have for your children moving forward and your family, including yourself, must outsize your pain, because that's one of the ways you're going to put the past behind you and look back and say, I did it. I can't believe I did it. And I know that's my story. So I want to connect with someone today who is wondering, how can I get through this painful, horrible situation that I'm in, where I'm feeling like I am in a circular firing squad of just emotional pain. Everywhere I turn, it hurts. So that's the reason for my passion, because I've been on the journey. I've watched my own daughter walk that journey, and she did create a supersized vision. Like myself, my children were my motivation. And I remember she said, this is my son. He's keeping me motivated. This is what I'm living for. And I am going to be in this fight till I win it. and it's an emotional win when you come out on the other side. So you cannot heal what you don't identify. So your first step is to identify the negative feelings that you're experiencing and the pain that you're experiencing. Name them, feel them, walk through it. You have to. It's part of that journey. Imagine having a wound with stitches and you need to go to the doctor to take out those stitches. Maybe they're not the ones that dissolve on their own. Imagine what happens if you do not go to the doctor to get those stitches removed. That's very similar to not allowing yourself to go through that pain and enjoy the healing that comes out on the other side, that makes you a whole individual, stronger than when you went into this battle. So own your feelings and tell it, share it. You decide who you get to share it with. A family member, a close friend, a coach, that's your decision. But it's a step you must make. Find the strength. I don't know. You're going to say, where do I find it? Where do I find it? Where do I find it? Every one of us has a reservoir that we can tap into. For me, because I grew up in a faith-filled home with parents who had been married for over 50 years, there was much that I could model from that source. But what I was also extraordinarily fortunate for was that community of friends and well-wishers. And some of us have good friend circle before this happens. And some of them will disappear because people take sides. But you must know where your hardcore of support is. And if it's not the numbers, it's the quality of your support. And each and every one of us has quality support, whether it's one person, two persons, or three persons. And along with my friends' support in a circle of extended family and friends, I am a person of faith. So I was able to dig deep into my faith. In fact, I think this situation strengthened my faith because I would never have considered myself a person of faith until I walked through this journey. And one of my very dear friends, in fact, she's still my friend to this day. I consider her my spiritual mentor. That friend reached out to me and she would pick me up every Saturday and we would go to this particular prayer group because she recognized that I needed it. And I remember the first gesture or outreach to me was a little book she brought and said, Clover, read this. And it was titled, Marriage is a Gift from God. And in that little book, she was trying to say to me, it's worth the fight. But even though I didn't win the fight in that way, through the process of my association and friendship with her, I was truly strengthened spiritually. So each and every one of us have different ways to tap into the reservoirs of support to find the strength. Sometimes we have to borrow somebody's strength to take us through those really dark days of hopelessness so that we don't go into even suicide ideation. And that's one of the issues that's really alarming me to do these lives, right? That if 1 in 3 marriages are ending, and during COVID, it was 1 in 4. And it was in my COVID respite or in my COVID timeout, as some people call it, that I recognized that this was an area that I really wanted to delve into and to share and to support other women because I realize how devastating it is to us as women and to our families. And I'm not saying that men do not have the experience of emotional devastation. I'm sure they do. But I'm specifically sharing my experience here as a woman. Something that I discovered pretty much on my own in my pain. When I got up on the pain, I remember in the early, as I would say, 6 months, one of the symptoms that you're still in the acute stage and you're not really into the healing journey yet was my sleeplessness, insomnia, and I'm a person who could sleep like a baby. And I used to get up and I had to tell myself that there is no man that should rattle me to the point where I am emotionally off balance. And one of the strategies that I consciously pursued was begin to think, what am I grateful for? What am I grateful for? And so I dug deep into that, creating that attitude of gratitude. And I thank God for my family and friends. I had a brother and a sister. My parents were still alive. And just my little inner circle of support. And I looked at my two children, infants at the time, and I said, yes, this is my motivation. Because guess what? I don't want to die and leave them. I don't want to die and leave them. And I kept praying that prayer. Please let me be around to see them through to adulthood. So that became my motivation and my gratitude prayer. Just to be thankful that I am here to see them through and that God would be with me to ensure that I did my best and that He gave me the grace and the attitude to support them. And finally, I think for all of us, this should be big. You have to create a vision that is so supersized that it outlasts your pain. And that when you look back and recognize that your pain is so far in the rear view that you are rejoicing in a way that you feel a sense of joy. You no longer even feel the sense of loss. And that's my story. I do not feel the sense of loss of my ex-husband. In fact, I look back and I see it as a blessing. Because I would not, my overall supersized vision for my three daughters was to ensure that as kids who were born in Jamaica, a third world country, would get an Ivy League or as close to an Ivy League education as possible, and that they would become citizens of a developed country so that their life chances would be significantly improved, would be so supersized that whatever knocked them off their feet, they would have opportunities for recovery and institutional support, which I did not have in Jamaica at the time. And depending on what cultures we are from and where this happens, the lack of institutional support can set us behind the eight ball because sometimes our families are just not able to give us the level of support that we need. So I cannot emphasize how important that motivation to create a vision. And even though the vision may look far-fetched, and am I going to achieve it? And can I achieve it? And I remember when my last child, it was 2015 about, when I was having discussions with her dad, who I still had a relationship at the time, but it was fledgling. And I was discussing the possibility of her going overseas, as was my supersized plan for my three girls. And I was totally daunted and knocked off my feet again because all I could hear from him was, I don't know where the money is coming from for her to go to university. I don't know where the money is coming from. And it became a chorus. It became such a chorus that I was so daunted that, again, I was not going to let my vision for my children slip from me. And so when 2014 came, I started planning and I started praying, because there was no way I was not going to achieve my vision for all three. Two of them were already residents of Canada and citizens. And so I had to work this pathway to get her as an international student. And as it turned out, an opportunity opened for me to go to China as an ESL instructor, an opportunity which was unimaginable when I was planning for my children 20 years before this, 25 years. It was just unimaginable. But I had a plan, and if you don't have a plan, you don't have a pathway. And we will go down the pathway in small journeys. We're not going to do it all at once. And my journey to China was not a straight line journey. But that opportunity opened as a result of several bits of just researching and checking and being in the right place at the right time, because by now I was in Vancouver with my eldest. And I was just looking for opportunities everywhere for myself and for my youngest daughter. And I remember going for an interview for a teaching job, which I saw on Craigslist. And I was there thinking, this is a private school in Canada looking for somebody. And when I went, I'll never forget it. When I went, there was a tall, really huge British-voiced man. And I smiled at him after we introduced ourselves. And I said, I thought I was coming to meet a Canadian. And he said, you know what? I'm British, but I'm actually Canadian now. And I run this organization. And we write curricula for schools in China who want to teach Western style ESL programs. Would you be willing to go? And I said, yes, I am willing to go, because I saw immediately from the salary and the benefits that this was the opportunity to pay for my daughter's international education. And her father had already outlined to me that he was dropping the ball on this. So I knew I was going to be on my own. And he did drop the ball, and he contributed 0 cents to her tuition fees. 0. So it is possible to recover from the trauma and the pain by taking small, calculated steps. Name your pain, identify your pain, share it, find your source of strength, create an attitude of gratitude, and last but not least, create a supersized vision of where you want to take yourself and your family. It is a huge motivation to move you from point A to point Z. I recovered, I caught up, and I am here to tell you that you too, you can heal, you can grow, and you can thrive. I am Clover Taylor Johnston, a co-parenting coach. Send me a DM to hear about my programs. Again, I'm so thankful for my listenership, live and on the replay. See you next time.